Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask Rob and Rob, the questions party that has no sign of stopping. The questions are still going, and that's like our music. And this week is no different because we're back with two more crackers. And as we always say, if you want to be part of the party or part of the podcast, we make it very easy for you.
Yep, just make sure you're not wearing trainers and you're not part of a large group of men. And then call this number, 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. Or you can go to thepropertyhub.net/ask. In fact, there are no requirements because you can just sit at home and do it in your pyjamas if you like. So I don't know whether Sam was wearing pyjamas or not when she recorded this question, but the main thing is she sent it in. Let's listen to what Sam wants to know.
Hi guys, it's Sam again from the Brecon Beacons. If you're happy to answer yet another one from me and think that this might be useful for others, here's my question. Buying through sources, including RMP, I often have to choose a property off-plan. The problem is I've never lived in a flat myself. Is it good to live next to the lift? I can imagine that it's convenient for moving and grocery shopping, but are lifts noisy? Can you hear it in the flat? Is it nicest to be on the top floor with potentially better views, more light and less noise from neighbours, but more stairs to climb? As I said, for me, it's all complete guesswork as I've never lived in a flat myself. When I recently had to pick out some plots to potentially reserve, I tried to use tenant forums and discussion boards, but couldn't find anything particularly useful for this job. So my question is, if you guys are presented with a small block of flats, what criteria do you use to pick the most lettable unit or the unit most likely to increase in capital value? Or do you just make sure that you're happy with the development as a whole and then just choose any unit that matches the number of bedrooms you'd ideally like? I hope this all makes sense. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much as always for the podcast, courses and the hub. I make use of everything and I'm steadily building up a small but very healthy little portfolio due in no small part to the work that you guys do. So thank you so much. I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Sam. And of course, you can have another question. One, because they're great questions. And two, because you're so lovely. So thank you, Sam, for the kind words. Well, let's give you a good answer. So I've done this myself a few times. And I think a quick story would help before I give context to it. I have always had the privilege of being able to pick plots first, kind of the company founder privileges that you get. So if I've bought off plan in the past, I've been able to take one of the first plots. It's fair enough. We've put the deal together. I'm sure you'll forgive me for that one. So in the past, when I used to pick plots, I used to take my time, think it through, and really analyse every single plot. Sounds very similar to what you're doing, Sam. And then I remember one particular occasion this played out in Leeds, where I'd spent so much time picking a plot out. And we went to the rental market, expecting mine to go immediately. Well, of course, it didn't. Lots of other people who were further down in the pecking order of picking their plots got theirs let before me. And me, the so-called expert, was about middle of the road. So it didn't work out as I'd expected. Now, why is that? Well, I learned a lesson, and these days I'm far less picky. Yes, I still have a look. And yes, I'll give it some consideration, but not a lot. I just want to make sure there's nothing dramatically wrong with the plot. And the reason why this is the case now is that everybody's different. All tenants are different, and all potential future owners of your property are different. They could walk into one apartment in a block and absolutely love it, and then hate the next one they go into. And then the next person walks in, hates the first one, and loves the second one. Because, for example, there may be a young mum with a child, and she doesn't want to take her shopping up the stairs and can't be bothered with the lift because it's a hassle with the child getting in and out the lift. They mess around with it. They've got to press the buttons. Yeah, I've got young children, you know. So this is what plays out with me. So they can't be bothered with all that. So they go on the lower floors. So they don't have to bother with the lift or lots of flights of stairs, maybe ground or first floor. Then you've got people who want the prestige of being on the top floors, and they want potential views, and that's understandable too. Then you've got people who want to be near the lift for convenience, but then you want people who want to be as far away from the lift as possible because they just don't like people and they want to stay right at the end of the corridor. So there's so many variables. I know you've probably called up looking for, it's this type of plot answer. But actually the answer, I still feel there's a lesson here, but the answer is it doesn't matter as much as you think. because every tenant is different and every tenant preference is different. As long as it's a good plot and there's nothing obviously wrong with it, you'll probably be fine.
Well, if you're picking out a plot for me, I'll take one on the top floor, so I've got a really nice view, and far away from the lift because I don't like people. That sounds like me all over. So yeah, as Rob says, everyone's different. Probably not one to worry about too much from a rental perspective. You asked about capital growth as well, and something to look out for is that if there is a unit available that is clearly better than the others or is unique in some way, that historically gets better capital growth. It's something I've seen a few times recently. I was actually just last week looking at a block in Hull. This block was built in 2003. Most flats in that block are now selling for exactly the same as they were selling for in 2003. But there are a couple of penthouses at the top that are selling for far, far more than they were in 2003. Because they're much nicer, they're basically in a different market. People are willing to pay far more than they would for one of the identical ones below. Now, that also goes for units that are bigger, that have big balconies and things like that. If it's unique in some way, it's probably going to have better capital growth. But of course, you're going to have to pay more for it to start with. The rent probably isn't going to be as much higher as the extra you're paying, therefore the yield will be lower. So if you do see an opportunity like that and your capital growth is your game, that's one to go for, but not so much if you're into the yield. So lots to think about, but for rental purposes, as long as the block as a whole is popular, you probably won't struggle whichever plot you pick.
Next up, we've got Stephen from sunny Edinburgh. Okay, not so sunny, but still very lovely.
Hi, Rob. Stephen calling here from Edinburgh. I have a question for you about life tenancies. I've somehow managed to end up on the mailing list for these, and I'm getting them all the time, and they look really, really good. Seems that you could buy somebody's home, like a percentage of the home, now for a huge discount, and then they live in it until they die, and then you take possession. Seems like a good long-term strategy. Just wanted to know what you both thought of those. Is it like potentially a really good long-term play, or is it more like a don't touch, like timeshares or something like that? Thanks very much. Appreciate all your work. Cheers.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. This is the great thing about Ask Rob and Rob. This is something we never would have covered had you not asked the question. And in fact, we were having a chat about it before we started recording it, because it's something that really doesn't come up very often. But clearly it is something out there, and it's something that found its way to you, Stephen. So you're naturally curious about what it involves. So a life tenancy is where a homeowner generally has done a deal with a company of some kind to get a sum of cash, maybe to supplement their pension, and give their house over to the company in exchange for the cash and for the right to stay there rent-free or with a very, very low rent until they die. And these companies sometimes want to sell these on to other companies or to investors. And as you've noticed, you can get these properties at a great discount. The reason for the discount is it's a very, very long-term investment. You're normally not going to get any rent, or you might just get a tiny bit of rent for the whole time that the people are living there. And then you have no control over when they leave. It's only when they die or when they move into permanent long-term care that you are then able to take the property over and rent it out to whoever you want. So that's the downside. You're buying an asset that you've got no real control over and that you're not seeing any money from an unknown period of time. But the benefit, as you've said, is that you can get a hefty discount. The discounts can be enormous, and it's normally calculated, which isn't very nice, on how long it's likely to be before the occupants die. Because, of course, the longer it is until you can realise any income from the property, the greater the discount that you're going to want. So as any kind of short or medium term strategy, it really doesn't make any sense at all. It could make sense if you're thinking about the very long term. So maybe you're building up a portfolio to put into trust for your children. In that case, a time frame of 20, 30, 40 years might be completely acceptable for you. Other than that, maybe if you're thinking about investing for your own retirement and you are particularly young at the moment, so you've got a time scale of sort of more than 30 years or so, maybe that would make sense. It's niche. It's really interesting. It's not going to be suitable for almost everyone listening to this. But I'm glad you brought it up, Stephen, because for a start, it's interesting and it's something new we've never talked about before. But also, you never know. For one person listening, this might be exactly the right thing for them to do. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, it is a really interesting model. Not one I think I'll take up. I don't want to start thinking, oh, when's that codger going to pop his clogs? I don't want to start wishing death on people. Like, they were meant to die 5 years ago on average. So, yeah, I'm not sure you would work that way, Stephen. And I'd like to think I wouldn't either. But I just don't want the temptation. But really interesting model and great question. Thank you very much. So Stephen had a great question. Sam had a great question. if you've got a great question in you, or maybe it's just a question that's really bugging you and you want answering and we decide it's a great question, we would love to hear from you. As Rob mentioned earlier, it's very easy to get in touch. Probably the easiest way is just go to thepropertyhub.net/ask. That's thepropertyhub.net/ask and leave your question there, because you could do that through your smartphone or through your desktop computer or your laptop. See? Loads of options.
Yeah, but not optional at all is tuning into the Property Podcast on Thursday. You're going to want to do that, of course. So until then, enjoy your next couple of days and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.